pictures here. So we have, a nice couple here. They're out snowshoeing. This is at one of our golf courses, is what I believe, from a couple years ago. But just a great place to get out and snowshoe when there's lots of snow. That's something that we provide. So it's a nice place to be. It's quiet. Obviously, there's not going to be a ton of people around, and just a beautiful space to get out there and go snowshoeing. So if you've never experienced snowshoeing, we'll talk about that here in just a minute. We'll also talk about cross-country skiing. So I think we got another picture coming up just with some people cross-country skiing. Again, it just kind of shows the beauty of what it can be like to get outside. So nice, snowy, cold conditions. When you're dressed for the weather and you're doing these activities, it's not like you're going outside and sitting where it's really cold. You're going to regret your decision quickly. You're going to be loving being out there. When you actually go out to go cross-country skiing, we tell people to dress like they were going to go running outside or going on like a swift walk or something like that. You don't want to have a ton of extra clothes on. But we'll talk about dressing for the weather in between when we talk about snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. So we'll have a short little gap in there where we talk about those things. So snowshoeing, we're going to identify some parts here in a little bit, but there's all sorts of different kinds. But mostly now we aren't using these kind anymore. So you guys probably know what this is made out of. We got a nice wooden frame here. We got some nails kind of pinning it together. And we got rawhide and leather, right? So we've got our frame that's helping us out here, and we have some nice materials here. But most people aren't using these kinds anymore. The ones in the picture there, those are all different kinds that we kind of have laying around the office. But essentially, if you were looking into getting an older pair like this, or more of a traditional style, that you were interested in that and you weren't interested in the newer style, which I'll show here in just a minute, know that there's different sizes for different things. So we'll talk about sizing, but in general, if they're shorter and a little bit wider, they're going to be better for like terrain where you're going up and down a lot, or around trees, kind of more on a trail, that sort of thing. And again, historically, think about what these would have been used for. So if you guys have that chat feature up, go ahead and throw some ideas in there. We'll make Zach do something behind the computer here. But what do you guys think these were used for? Right? Why did people need snowshoes that look like this? Okay. And as you're typing some stuff in there, know that the longer snowshoes, kind of narrower and longer, those are good for like hiking across frozen lakes. Or big open areas like fields, frozen tundras, those sort of areas. So know that just lots of different spots for these sort of things. Like I said, you're probably not going to be interested in these types, but maybe you have some laying around that you could recondition. You could, sand the frame down a little bit. You can put, what's it called? Paint, like urethane, that sort of thing on here, and that will kind of keep these things going. So that's nice and helpful, keeps these things around for a long time. Like I said, we have these in our office, the bindings. We would need to put some new leather bindings on here if we were using these, but there's no reason why I couldn't take these outside in the snow and get on them and enjoy them. Okay. So next slide, I'm going to hop out here for just a second so you guys can see the picture there really well. Know that the camera wants to focus on what it can. So once I hop back in, I'll be fuzzy for a little bit, but then I'll clear up. So probably not most likely the connection. It's going to be most likely our camera kind of catching up with the camera. So not too many parts on a snowshoe, which is good, but we got different things on there. So we'll start with the blue one there. That's the deck. So that's just the big flat spot. This is a more modern snowshoe. Obviously it's not wood. We don't have rawhide or anything like that. This is more metal frame, which is, so that green one, the frame, the perimeter of that kind of builds what the deck can go on. So green is the frame, the blue there is the deck. That's where it kind of provides all of the loft when we're on a snowshoe, because that's why we need snowshoes. These aren't something that we wear just when there's snow for the fun of it. We really use these so that we don't sink down into the snow. Most people understand, if I say post holing, you know what that means. So you take a step, and you shift your weight onto that foot and you just sink right back down to the bottom, or up to your knee. That's not any fun. So if you're using snowshoes, that's going to help you prevent having that happen. The red one there on the bottom, so that's a crampon. I'm going to actually throw this up on the screen so you guys can see this a lot better. And I know the camera will take a second, but you guys can see the crampon here. These are really like expedition style snowshoe, where they're really aggressive. You're not going to bend these. Like, there's nothing you could do to bend these. And then this part is on the hinge, so this is where your foot's going to go, just like in the picture. But this is really to bite that hard crusted snow or ice. So sometimes snowshoes are used for fluffy snow, but then maybe you are using them in a mountain environment. So picture, like, if you're in the Adirondacks of upstate New York right now, they've got snow, it's cold, it's frozen. Maybe you want to hike up Mount Marcy, which is the highest point in New York. You're going up there. Zach's all excited behind the camera here talking about hiking Mount Marcy, but you need them for snow, and then when you get up on those windswept hillsides and mountains, you really need a crampon to grip you in there. You don't want to have this big lofty deck and just having you be sliding all around. So that's what the crampons are. That's that red box if we were to fill that in. And then the purple, or kind of that pinkish color, and the yellow, that's just the tip and the tail. So the tip is obviously in the front. And you can see with the boot in that picture there, the binding does kind of open up and allow your foot to kind of go work naturally. So that's kind of talking about how they are, you know, the parts and that sort of thing. But if we're using these, it's nice to have different sizes. So this is a pretty big one. But in general, snowshoes are sized by weight. So if this is, I think this is a 30-inch one, and you guys can see there, I gotta pop out, sorry. That 9 by 30 inch, this would be for a big person. So at over 200 pounds, which I qualify as that, this is a snowshoe that I would need so that I can, you know, best not sink into the ground. If you are a little smaller, or you know, have different size weights there, and you're having gear on, you know, maybe you are doing this backpacking and you're gonna have a 25, 30 pound pack on, and you only weigh 120 pounds, you might jump up into that 150 range if you have a pack on. So then if you look at that chart, you'd go probably from a little bit shorter, or a little bit smaller snowshoe up into that bigger one, just because you need that added loft. That's why we're snowshoeing. So just consider that when you're looking at snowshoes. Don't just think about what your body weight is, but think about what your body weight is if you are using this for backpacking or something like this. So I'm gonna, I do need to stand over here. So in hiking with snowshoes, you want to just walk normally, okay? So if I have this snowshoe on, this is a lot smaller one, right? So this is for probably up to 120, 125 pound individual. You can see how the shoe goes on there, the binding, some are straps. I gotta wave so camera, there I am. So that the shoe stays on. You don't want it to slip because you want this hinge mechanism to be able to go as you're hiking. We try not to change our stride too much. You don't want to walk like penguin-footed with your toes pointing out or anything like that, and you don't really want to widen your gait either. You want to kind of keep your hips where they are and try to walk normally, because the design of the snowshoe, and you can see this just a little bit, they are tapered. This one is asymmetrical, so it's both on both sides, but there are other ones where it's narrower on the inside or kind of has a kick out so that you can see this, so that you can walk normally and not actually step on the deck of each snowshoe. So that works. When you're going over obstacles, you can see we've got a picture of an individual stepping over a log. So just kind of going to the side, you wouldn't want to, if there's a lot of snow in that picture, you probably could step up on that log and get away with that, but you don't want to bridge anything. So you don't want to step, and use my hands here, I don't want to be like this and then have nothing supported on that inside of my, actually under my foot, for obvious reasons, right? I could bend that frame and then I wouldn't have a good snowshoe anymore. I'd have a piece of aluminum that needs fixed, okay? So that's kind of going over a simple obstacle. When you step over there, you would need to get your foot, make space to get your foot out on the other side. But the big thing you want to avoid when you're going over things is don't bridge that thing. So don't just be on the tips and the tails of the snowshoe. You really need to be everywhere that you possibly can be with these, and make sure that there's snow under the surface of your foot, not just in the front and the back. Okay? So the next picture here is going to talk about going up or down gentle hills. So this is called sidestepping. There's no use for it in real life, except for going up or down really, kind of steep hills. So you're just walking sideways, up or down, moving your left foot over, moving your right foot over, moving your left foot over, moving your right foot over. You can kind of see there's some motion to this picture in the sense that you could see that person picking up their right foot to place it down and then really move that left foot over and kind of keep going. And if you've seen movies where people are like going up mountains or something like this, if it's not really steep and it's just kind of a gentle grade, they're going to continue to progress up or down gentle hills this way. So the next one here, when your hills get a little bit steeper, you can see on that picture on the left there kind of this V-shaped pattern. So that's kind of a herringbone, and you want to be on the inside of your foot. So in that picture on the left, you want to be on your big toe side on each of those, and really kind of now where you can get into that kind of penguin stance and kind of waddle up, keeping your snowshoes on that angle. That way you don't slide back. So like I said, snowshoes, you really need to get that crampon to engage so that you don't just slip, because if they didn't have crampons, you're just on big sleds essentially. And again, I'll show this picture here. This is more of a gentle recreational crampon style. So it's not quite as aggressive. You can see this is just a nice, it's going to do the job, but it's nothing super aggressive, right? So it's just a little thin aluminum. It's not that real big piece. So kind of match what snowshoe you were going to get based on what type of terrain you're going to be in. If you don't envision yourself being in icy conditions too much, you're just going to be in fluffy snow, you can get a lighter weight, not quite as expensive snowshoe. So, and this picture again does a really good job of showing what it's like going up steep hills. So you can see that person's foot, their toes are actually hinged down under, and again I'll throw this snowshoe up here so you can see this, but that's really hinged so that person's toe is under the snow, right? So this person, as they kick, if they just stayed flat-footed going up this steep hill, they would probably fall. Whereas if they can really kick that in there and swing that foot into that hillside, then you're going to be able to go up. And now you can see the importance why that tip of that snowshoe is also canted up at about a 45-degree angle. So it's helpful there. Nice. So if you guys have questions about snowshoeing, throw it in the comments there. I know some people, you're just tuning in to learn about this stuff and don't really have any questions, but if you have questions about equipment, let us know, and I'll go back to the snowshoe questions after we talk about putting on clothes for being outside in the wintertime. So for most people, this is pretty obvious. This diagram does a really good job of showing kind of just what useful clothes for when you're wearing outside. I had mentioned when you're wearing clothes for being outside, don't dress too warmly, right? You're going to go out, this is going to be hard work. You're hiking in deep snow. If you've seen a dog go outside, all the funny videos you see about dogs experiencing snow for the first time, they've got to jump up and hop. They're working really hard, and you're going to be the same way. You're going to be working really hard. So the key is really dressing in layers. Got that thin, wicking layer close to you that's not cotton. An insulating layer that a light fleece or a vest or something like that, and then a wind shell, or if it's actively snowing, maybe some sort of waterproof layer on the outside. But the key is, lots of things with zippers. I wouldn't wear a hooded sweatshirt or a t-shirt and a hooded sweatshirt and a jacket. You don't have lots of options there. But if you've got a short sleeve shirt on, and then a long sleeve shirt maybe with a big zipper, and then another windbreaker, hat and gloves, those things are going to go a long way keeping yourself comfortable out there. I would say the biggest challenge with snowshoeing and cross-country skiing when you're outside in the winter is not actually staying warm, it's just preventing being chilled when you stop moving for a little while. So if you've ever exercised outside in the wintertime, you're kind of overheating when you're outside, and when you get inside, aside from maybe your cold toes and your cold hands, the rest of you just get chilled pretty quickly just because that sweat that is on you, with the wind or whatever, you just got chilled. So you really don't warm up till you get back in that shower. So if snowshoeing is not your thing, and remember, snowshoes are sized by your body weight, not really how tall you are or anything like that, because it's all about providing loft when you're up on that snow. Cross-country skis, you'll learn, are going to be very similar about when we size them But again, we need to talk about just the parts of a ski, okay? So I got a couple pairs leaning up here. Come back over this way. You guys can see on this picture there are, a ski kind of like so, right? We've got our binding, we've got the ski, we've got the bottom, we've got a nice little design. We have the tip of the ski up here, which you guys can see. Again, it's curved up, right? You need to be able to keep moving. And then the tail comes up a little bit, but it's not too much there. And I'm going to step off so you guys can see this picture, because this is going to help you understand how a cross-country ski works. So cross-country skis are not flat sticks, right? The picture that we have here, this illustration, we've exaggerated the curve a little bit so that you can see it. But it helps, and this is how you glide. So when you cross-country ski in the classic style, which is the kind of picture on the bottom left, that's what most people think about. You actually need to be able to push down on that binding and engage that grip zone. And under skis, depending on the type of ski, which we'll get into in a second, you're basically engaging that pattern or that wax on the bottom of the ski so that you can then push off of that ski and you actually glide on the tips and the tails, which is why there is that camber in the ski. So it's got a little arch to it. It's really hard to see on the camera, but if I try to put this right above the words, there we go. You can kind of see this camber that's in this ski that goes up and down some, okay? So a little bit tricky, but then you push down on that weight and then you'll be able to glide on that. So there are two types of skiing, cross-country skiing and Nordic skiing. For our sake, those are the same things. We use that term interchangeably. But that person on that bottom left, they're doing classic skiing. They've got diagonal stride, their feet are parallel, and they're kind of trotting along. If they're, as you get better at cross-country skiing, you really do transfer your weight and glide on that one ski until you have no glide left, and then you push off that other ski and kind of transfer your weight onto the other ski and slide off of that one. And then skate skiing, the bottom right graphic there, is more kind of that anaerobic activity. You're going to be able to, it's a skate motion, right? So it's just like ice skating. You're pushing off your big toe side and really gliding out in that V pattern, okay? So kind of explaining how you do this, right? I know virtual programs don't do things justice in this regard, but classic cross-country skiing, as you can see, is really that push and glide technique. So I've kind of explained it, but you're on that one ski, and you really kind of want to focus all your weight balancing on that knee, on that foot, so that your knee is right over your shoe, right? And then as you do that, our feet, these are not downhill skis, right? So you guys can see here, my heel pops up, okay? So as I ski, I can put the weight on this foot, and then I push off of this ski, and as soon as I do that, I transfer that weight onto my other ski, getting my weight over my knee, and then I glide on that ski on my tips and my tails because of that arch in the ski until I have no momentum left. And then I jump onto that other ski, essentially pushing off maybe with my right foot then. And then I glide on the left, push off with my left foot, glide on my right ski, push off with my right foot, glide on my left ski. So if you see someone cross-country skiing, and that kind of graphic kind of shows it, they're kind of like plodding along, right? Kind of one foot, then the other, one foot, then the other. They don't have a lot of glide. But once you get better at it and you can balance more on one foot, then you really get pushed off and you can really glide so that you're not just hiking on skis, you're actually skiing, where each stride then is going to cover 10, 15, 20 feet instead of just, maybe 3 or 4 feet. So, and that can depend on the conditions as well, and if you're in groomed tracks. So there are places that groom for cross-country skiing, so they compact the snow and set 2 little perfect nice little channels for your skis to go in. If you watch the Olympics, you watch Jesse Diggins race things and win things, that's like this prime environment where you can really get into it, where your skis aren't going to pop off. But you can classic cross-country ski, not on groomed terrain, just anywhere you've got plenty of snow, you can get gliding. And the cool thing is, especially in Cleveland, the places that you go cross-country skiing, the places I go cross-country skiing, I return to, and then everyone else has discovered that those are good areas as well. So even if there isn't a machine out there with a snowmobile hauling, a contraption behind it to pack that snow down and make it awesome, the other people that have skied there before, you get set tracks. So if you're snowshoeing somewhere and you see set tracks for cross-country skiing, don't ruin them. So don't walk in those tracks, make your own. That way the people that are skiing in the future there can enjoy the set tracks that other people have gone before them and enjoyed. Again, I'll step out because skate skiing here is more aggressive. It is that V style. It does use skate skis, so they are different. The bottom of a skate ski is completely smooth, where the bottom of cross-country classic ski, and we'll see if we can get the camera to get this. You can see the texture here. The light's kind of reflecting off of it. There's kind of like a fish scale pattern here, but it ends at the underneath that foot. So right here, this is the tail. I know you guys can't tell exactly, but behind my finger here is just completely smooth, and then this is all texture pattern, and then in the front, coming this way, this is all smooth as well. So there's really only texture in the center part of that ski, and that's what you kind of push down. So you push down, that's what engages the snow, and then you push off, and then you can glide on the tips and the tails. So that's how a classic ski is made, essentially. That's how it's designed to work. Skate skiing, you really need a groomed surface for this. You can't skate ski where it's not groomed. It's just not going to work. You need that packed down, compressed snow where that moisture content has really frozen that really well. So again, in the Olympics, you do see both types of skiing. Oftentimes, if it's a race, it's probably skate skiing. There are classic cross-country ski races as well, but skate skiing is a very powerful movement. Those people are enormous. They've got great technique. Where most people around Cleveland, you're just going to see cross-country skiing in that classic style, just because you're getting out there. And we don't have a ton of groomed spaces, so it's a good activity to do in the wintertime. So, just like snowshoes, and you're not expected to be able to read this chart entirely, cross-country skis are sized by weight. So again, I mentioned that I'm over that 200-pound person scale. If I jump over here, the ski is taller than me, right? It's off the screen. I know you can't see it, but this is a big ski, right? It's really long. So it's designed to hold my weight up, because if I get on a ski that's too small for me, I'm going to have no camber, right? I'm not going to be able to glide at all. I'm just going to have two sticks attached to my feet. And in contrast, if someone that is really small, so if a 100-pound person gets on a ski that's too big for them, the opposite's going to be true. They're not going to be able to push off at all, because that arch in that ski, that camber, kind of like the bottom of a rocking chair, if you had a rocking chair upside down, the center would be off the ground. So if you don't have enough weight to compress that upside down essentially, you wouldn't be able to get any push off. So you'd stand there and you'd slide back and forth, which would not be enjoyable for you. So you really need to buy skis based on your weight. And if you're a beginner, I always say size down just a little tiny bit, because you want to be able to have more push off than more glide, but you might out-ski your skis pretty quickly once you start getting technique down. So there are places that sell cross-country skis secondhand, and even if not secondhand cross-country skis, compared to other winter downhill skiing or other types of winter activities, cross-country skiing is pretty inexpensive. So snowshoes, just because I know some people ask, you can get snowshoes for around $100, $120, brand new pair, and those snowshoes are probably going to last you, most of your life. Cross-country skis, the pattern does wear out in the bottom eventually, but again, you're going to buy a pair of skis and probably be on those skis. If you're not going anywhere else and you're only skiing when Cleveland has snow, those skis are going to last you 10 years. And the same thing, so cross-country skis are not super expensive. You can buy a brand new pair of cross-country skis with bindings for around $200. And then ski boots, cross-country ski boots are probably like $60 to maybe $100. You can obviously spend more if you want to, but under that $300 range, you can get a set of cross-country skis, poles, and not have any issue. So with skis, they're sized by weight. The thing that is sized by height in skiing is your ski pole. So you want your ski poles, when you have them in front of you, they need to come up kind of to your chin, or some people say under your arm, right? Or like right here in your shoulder. So And the reason for that is because a ski pole like this is going to actually help you with that push-off technique. So when you put a ski pole strap on, you actually want to go up through and then make an L with your hand like that, an L or V. And then I actually hold the ski pole like this. And that way when I'm skiing, I don't have to have this death grip on my ski pole the whole time. When I put it on the snow, I can push off just with my wrist, and then I don't have to worry as much about losing that ski or having this big grip. I can just engage it in the ground and push off and really transfer my weight as I continue skiing on. So that's how ski poles go. And again, like I said, not super expensive when you're trying to get this stuff. So snowshoes and skis are both sized by weight. Poles for cross-country skiing are sized by height. And again, maybe go a little bit shorter just because you don't want to have these big awkward ski poles. And when you're skiing, they're really meant to stay behind you. So the tips of your cross-country ski poles shouldn't ever really come in front of your heels. They're always behind you. That's because you're using them to push off. And then also if you fall, they're behind you. So you don't have any issues with a broken pole in front of you or anything like that. So I'm going to hop out here just so you guys can see this picture as well. So that's actually me. That's really funny. So cross-country skiing, you can see I am shifted my weight onto my right foot at this point. And I'm in that transition point where I'm really shifting my weight onto that right ski. So I really don't have any glide left. And pretty soon I'm going to plant that right foot, shift all of my weight over onto my right foot, and then push down on that ski and kind of push off and shift my weight back onto my left ski. So this kind of gives you an idea again of that motion. I think this is actually a screenshot of a video when we were talking about technique and doing that sort of thing. So that grip zone is really what needs to engage that ski so that you can glide on the tips and the tails until all your weight's back on that other ski, and then you kind of keep on going. So this is somewhere that's not groomed, but you can see once people ski, you kind of get those set tracks. So I've mentioned this before, but if you're skiing or you're hiking, whether you're hiking in compacted snow or you've got snowshoes on, if you see cross-country ski tracks, two nice long parallel tracks, don't hike in them. Sometimes people do like to hike in those just because that snow is often compacted, but you can really kind of damage that experience for those other individuals that are out there enjoying winter just by cross-country skiing. So with snowshoes, this is not something you need to worry about, which is why we don't talk about it, right? With snowshoes, your boot just goes in the binding, your boot just gets strapped in, any boot's going to work, essentially. With cross-country skis, you can see there are different kinds of bindings. So the one on the far left there, that is kind of an older style, or initially older style. I will say there are brand new boots that utilize this 75 millimeter 3-pin binding. So boots are more generally going to be leather if you're buying boots that are this style. And you can see on the bottom of this boot, there's 3 pins. You can kind of see the shadows here. 3 holes where these pins go. So the binding for this style just goes right on like that. And then it just clamps down, and then you're good to go. So there's no hinge. The hinge is just in the leather part of the boot. Okay. Where a new style binding, the bottom of the ski or the bottom of the boot needs to match the pattern of the binding. So binding manufacturers actually sell the patent for the corresponding pattern for the bottom of a ski, the bottom of a boot. So these ones, there's more of a bar, you can see it here in this boot in that gray part, and it goes onto a binding, and it clicks down, and then there's a hinge actually built in a little bit into the binding, right? So you're kind of pivoting with that bar being that fulcrum point, right? So I'll step out so you guys can see this so I can just talk about it. NNN, the new Nordic norm, is fairly standard. So that's going to be what a lot of cross-country ski boots are once you've kind of jumped out of the old school 75 millimeter binding range. There is NNN backcountry. That's just a little bit wider. I know you can't really tell from that picture, but the whole thing is just wider. That just gives you more control as you're skiing in terrain that's meant for backcountry, right? So you're not in a groomed Nordic center. You're not in groomed terrain. You're not skiing in tracks. You're kind of out exploring, kind of see it as hiking trails that you normally would just hike on, not, just cross-country skiing on. And then Salomon is another brand. They have a Salomon Nordic system. They actually have a couple different ones. So just pay attention to that. It's really obvious when you have the bottom of a boot, and again, I'll show this one here on the camera that you guys can see. We got big old markers here showing what size they are. So this is an NNN binding. So you could tell just by looking at the bottom of this boot, once you've identified this, now that you know this is a thing, I would need a binding with 2 ridges that kind of go in these 2 slots the whole way on this ski here. Where if you look at the binding on the white binding there on the far right, that's a slalom, and that's a raised channel, so you need a boot that has a spot for a raised channel to go completely in the center. This bottom of this boot, you can kind of tell just from the picture, would not work with a Salomon Nordic system. And the cool thing is, it tells you, right? So it says on this boot, and again, you're probably not going to be able to say it, but right here it says Rotofellow NNN. So you would need to find the binding that also says NNN, which these ones do. So just know that if you're buying secondhand stuff, any person at a store is going to be able to tell you that. But if you're buying secondhand stuff, make sure those things match. And this is just some of the bottoms of that boot. So the boot on the far right is that SNS style, which is another fairly common one, but it has that big channel in the center. And that's just because you want your heel to be able to be loose in this environment, but you need to be able to still have some control on the bottom, right? They need to be paired together so that you're not just slipping off and you wouldn't have any control of that ski, like left to right. And to some degree, it does help with ankle support, right? So if I'm stepping on a surface that has some engagingness to it, then my ankle's not going to turn quite as much if I'm cross-country skiing, because that is important. As you're learning to do this, falling over is part of the game. I'm not going to pretend it's not. I still fall over because you're shifting your weight and you're trying to get onto one ski. So there is a balance aspect to this, and it's dynamic, right? We're not most likely cross-country skiing on a flat, football field that is perfectly flat the whole way around. The terrain underneath your ski is going to be changing, so you really need to have that interface work together, and balance is a big part of this sport, I would say. So, places to go, you see kind of cool, right? So anywhere there's snow is good, right? So a lot of the hiking trails and the bridle trails, if there's not a ton of sharp turns and that sort of thing in those trails, those are going to be good spots. A lot of people like to cross-country ski in North Chagrin Reservation on the bridle trails in the winter times, just because North Chagrin gets a lot of snow, and then bridle trails, just because of the size of horses, they don't often have sharp turns at the bottom of hills or anything like that. You're able to maneuver fairly well on the horse trails that are a little bit wider. All the golf courses there are listed. Big Met is first. Not just because this is alphabetical, but because Big Met does provide rentals. So when there is at least 4 inches of snow, Big Met provides rentals where you can rent cross-country skis. As far as snowshoeing, North Chagrin, the Nature Center, rents snowshoes from 9:30 to 4:30, 7 days a week. So only when there's snow, obviously. But you can grab them. You can go out and enjoy them on the trails in North Chagrin and bring them back. Those are kind of strategic. Big Met does get some snow just because of where it is, and then the northeast side, obviously the North Chagrin, they get some snow as well. But there are spots that are groomed. So Seneca Golf Course does get groomed, and those golf courses are great. So there is a winter sports hotline, which Zach at the end will put our website up here, but you can call and get information about what golf course is open, have they groomed, and that sort of thing. It's hard for me to talk about because we haven't had, the phone line hasn't been updated because we haven't had snow. But it is something that, once we do get snow, it's saved in my phone. I'm calling it, seeing what's available. Cross-country skiing on groomed terrain is definitely easier as a beginner. I would say once you have learned how to ski, it's not super critical. You're still going to be able to have a good time. But Big Met is a great spot to learn how to ski if you haven't skied before, because they do groom it. So there are some other spots. Chapin Forest, which is ran by Lake Metro Parks, they have rentals. They do groom there as well. And just because of their location, they're a little bit farther northeast than where we are in Norsjögren, but they do have lots of good snow, and they actually light some as well. So they have I think it's like 2 kilometers that they light until 9 p.m. as well. If you really get into this, there are a lot of other amazing spots you can go. Wilderness Lodge is actually in northeast Pennsylvania, but really northwest Pennsylvania, because it's just an amazing spot to be. So there's great spots there. There are other spots that you can go in Laurel Ridge, in kind of east of Pittsburgh. There is cross-country skiing there. That's a really good spot to get some information. They have rentals there, and they do cross-country skiing as well. And then in addition to that, if you're really into it, you can go to West Virginia. There's a place called Whitegrass, which is really cool, kind of backcountry, nice place to go skiing. It's a little bit farther away, but when they have snow, it's absolutely phenomenal. It's probably one of the best Nordic centers in the East. And then Art Roscoe is in Western New York, by Salamanca, New York. They do also get a lot of snow there. If you do downhill ski, you pass it. It's right before you get to Holiday Valley. Art Roscoe ski area is in Allegheny State Park in New York. So not the Allegheny National Forest in western Pennsylvania, but Allegheny State Park in New York. So those are great spots for that.
So before we move on to other winter activities, we have one question here. We have a question about cross-country skiing boots. Should they fit tightly, or should there be a little bit of room to grow, I guess you could say? How should they fit?
Yeah, good question, and you're not going to like my answer. I'm going to say neither. So you don't want them too big, and you don't want them tight either. So it's obviously a winter activity. The good thing would be having just maybe one pair of socks, and then because of that balance issue, you don't want your foot slopping around inside your shoe. So don't get one that's tight. Get one that does just fit, essentially. If you are going to get one, I'd say get one that is a little bit bigger so you can throw another pair of socks on, A, so that you can be warmer, and then B, just so that it's something you enjoy. If your foot is really tight, it's not something that you're going to, it's not something you're going to enjoy. So find a shoe that fits, and don't try to get one that's too small, and don't get one that you're going to say like, oh, my kid will grow into it. Like I said, cross-country ski stuff is, in my opinion, very inexpensive. Once you have one size of boot that fits, you can always size up. Buying things used on eBay and online, all sorts of things. You can find cross-country ski shoes and boots all day for like $25. And while that $25 might seem like a bigger investment initially, when you go to sell it in 2 years or give it to another kid, you're going to make back some of that money. And then, over time, you're only paying $10, $15 for an activity that you can do in the winter. You don't have to pay lift tickets or anything like that. So it does seem like an investment, especially if we don't have a ton of snow. Last year, I will tell you, it was a good year for Cleveland snow. We had 45 days where it was below freezing. It was kind of late January into February. And I could have skied, I think we could have skied 38 of those days. So it wouldn't have been amazing conditions every one of those days, but once we had the snow stayed. So there are other spots to go skiing closer to home, and you'll find those spots. As you're learning, you don't need 5 miles. You need like a 2-mile trail that you're going to go out and back on probably. And A, because you're doing this when it's cold, you're figuring out what clothes to wear, and then as you get into it, then you might invest more money and that sort of thing. But even the best pair of cross-country skis and boots, you're not going to spend more than $500 on that, right? So it's just a kind of low barrier. It's something that everyone can get into. My first pair of cross-country skis were like this, right? 75 millimeter binding, a shoe like this, big old leather thing, and they were like $20. So I think I found them at a Goodwill store. It's something I still look at when I'm at Goodwill or thrift stores, trying to find those things, because you can still find boots like this that work really well. And if you can't find them locally, you can get online and find used pairs for $10, $15, that sort of thing. So I'm going to jump out here, and I hope you guys can join us for a program where we actually get to see you, and we actually get to get out there and do some skiing. Thanks again.